Hey, I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Rich.
And we felt that there were probably 10 questions or barriers or hurdles that are preventing some of you from stepping into the online space and sharing evangelistic content.
And so we've approached 10 guests to come on each podcast to explain to us how they managed to get over the hurdles themselves and to give us their wisdom.
So we hope you can join us and learn something from our expert panel, from our wisdom here at CV, and hopefully some of our conversation.
Right, this question, big question, do people need to hear my voice? And I know from my journey, it can definitely a big obstacle to get over because, you know, do people need to hear my voice online when there's loads of stuff already and there's a plethora of things that people are listening to, watching, reading? Why do I need to be involved?
I think it's quite interesting when you're saying that. Your first way, when you said, do people need to hear my voice? My first answer was no. No, I'm joking. But it's just really, I think as somebody who's a bit of a chatterbox,
right.
I remember being told so much as a child, shut up, be quiet, you know. And so actually straight away inside of me, that does something. It makes me kind of go, do I have a valid voice? Right. But not just for me as a chatterbox. I imagine there's other people who are probably shyer, who also have the same struggle within them. So I think it's a really valid question that we get asked so much at CV is like, do people really want to hear me? Have I got anything unique to bring to this table? And it's really knowing who you are in God, I think is the most important part of this.
Yeah, and it can get really deep, this question. I don't think we're going to be able to cover that in the few minutes that we've got. But I know that when I started to go on a journey of putting more of my own voice out online digitally, and mine specifically was through video, through TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, I went on a journey and I'd never done TikTok. It was, why would I want to go on TikTok? It's for like the young guns and I definitely am not young anymore. And so I thought, I'm going to do it. I want it to be obedient to what I felt like was before me. And so one of the things I did is I went to set a TikTok account up with no information. So I gave it my name and my date of birth, but I didn't put anything else in there as best as possible, ask you for some things. And so essentially it was a blank canvas. And I wanted to see what it was like for me to search for things like faith, spirituality, Jesus, and see what actually started to be thrown up to me, knowing that a few weeks down the line, it'd all start to migrate into the algorithm and serve me what it thinks I want. And I was absolutely shocked at what was out there. I remember the first time I looked at it, I put spirituality in and like live seances were being done and you were in a seance that was going on. And then there was like ghost hunting that was going on in warehouses live.
It's in tarot card reading and all sorts on there.
Yeah. And so that whole kind of dark side of life was being dominant. And I thought, man, there's people out there who are like searching and looking for answers. And so they go into where the world goes, they go into the device, they're like putting stuff in and they're looking around for it. And what they're being served up is not the truth. And it kind of hit me like, you know, the question, do people need to hear my voice? It was like, yes, because when I was searching, it wasn't like I was wading through loads of people telling me about Jesus. It wasn't like the algorithms were throwing me things in. It was a whole heap of other stuff. Yet, what I do know is the Bible says is that the kingdom is like a bit of yeast and it spreads through the whole batch. And so I'm encouraged to say, well, I'm going to put my voice out there and it might not show up on everyone's feed, but if there's enough of us, it can be like yeast. It can go through the whole batch and the good news of Jesus can spread. And so I'm really encouraged that, one, I don't want to put my voice out there for various reasons. I don't want, for deeper reasons than we've got time to go into this, but I've had to get over myself and to go, I'm going to put it out there because there's people who are sat on an evening on a sofa whilst watching TV and doom scrolling at the same time who are searching and are stumbling across all sorts of things that just aren't right.
I listened to a really cool podcast episode recently with Stephen Bartlett, and I think it's Mo Gowda, I think you say his name is, and he was unpacking some of the future of AI and all that kind of stuff. And it really spurred me into thinking, if we're teaching AI at the moment how to speak, what it's going, all the things it's going to learn for the future, the more that right now we could start teaching it Jesus. The more it could start spitting out more Jesus, accurate truth as well to these people and boosting the algorithm and stuff. And I think we've got a real opportunity to, bring this yeast into this place of the online space to reach more people than we ever imagined.
Yeah. I caught up with Solanki, who I know that you're friends with as well, and he goes by the name of Digital Rabbi online.
Cool name.
And he's a real gift. He runs his own church in London called Reflect Church, and he's got a ministry which is to help churches essentially amplify their voices on ministry leaders through marketing, through social media, and he's been out, and I've followed his journey of putting his voice out online, telling people about the good news of Jesus. And so I asked him the question, do people really need to hear my voice? And he had some great stuff to say.
I think everybody's got a different voice, haven't they? So it's definitely true that there are a lot of people out there. Well, actually, there's not that many people. Well, what you tend to find is most of the content is created by a small percentage. So I'd be making this up, but it'd be something like, 1% is creating, the 99% that you're seeing. And so actually, there is a lot of content out there, but it's in one sense actually quite narrow because you tend to get the same sort of voice coming through, which is not necessarily bad, but it's one aspect of what maybe people need to hear. And I think the sort of encouragement for anyone who's sort of, thinking, what's the point? There's already these big names and big voices out there. It's actually that, you do have something unique to say. So I think there's that. That's really the main thing. And I think the world is, if that's what you're called to do, if there's something on the inside of you to put out into the world, for me, digital and social media, all those things, it's just another medium of where you might, express the things that you feel called to do, etc. And if you don't do that, the world will be poorer. So why not?
It was great that Sat said to us and really encouraged us there to bring almost like your unique you to this online space, that there is a lot of voices out there, but it's quite a narrow breadth to it, really. And actually, if more of us really learn who we really uniquely are, we could bring so much more breadth and depth to this. So, people who have got these, Roblox worlds or these online gaming worlds or this, what is you? What are you passionate about? And what could you almost use that as the donkey, the mode to the message as part of you being in the online space? And then, maybe for some people it's reaching gamers. Maybe it's, everyone's got a different people or people group or audience that they're passionate about, and I think we've all got a lot of opportunity that we haven't probably considered. And I love that.
I think a great exercise to maybe do is to write on a piece of paper, what is my voice? And good. To I don't know, spider diagram it and just put what is my voice? Am I someone who's bold? Am I someone who's encouraging? Am I someone who's wisdom? What is your voice? And not what do you want to be, because that could essentially be a difficult thing to grow into. But looking back over my life, what is my voice? And I think that exercise, if you were then to do it and to then show it to
others, to bring them in and add lines onto your spider diagram.
Or to tell you you are so far from the truth. They're going to give you a bit of a wake-up call, or it should be encouraging to you, which is, that is my voice. And then from there, that is a great place to start, to be able to go, I'm going to bring that into the online space. And I find that for me, I've always enjoyed talking about the Bible and making it simple for anyone to understand. I think anyone. And I'm not a theologian. I'm not a deep study Bible teacher. And that is not on my spider diagram. And so I've gone to, so I want to take short segments of the Bible and I want to unpack that for doom scrollers. How do I do that in a way that is going to work? And I'm still experimenting with it, but when I look back at the past 20 years of me communicating, no one's ever asked, will Rich Martin come and teach the book of Romans? That's never happened in my life, right? And so what I'm not going to do is go online and do a book series on Romans, because that is not my voice. But what I have been brought in for, what I have done in my past of communicating in front of people, has always been encouragement, or has always been taking things and making it applicable to just the everyday man and woman who would be in a church or would be following God. And then I have this a desire to tell people about Jesus. And so I'm trying to work out how to combine that and find that voice, but it's come from, but who am I already? And then I find deep joy in doing it.
That's
I'm not
cool.
I don't get bored doing it. I find energy and enjoyment.
Do you think there's also, for some people, they've got to find, some people have got maybe a passionate niche about a particular people group as well.
Yeah.
So it could be a particular religious people group or an ethnicity group or whatever. And actually now with the powers of AI, they can use some of these AI tools to help them engage these people in the different languages.
Right.
So that's some of the stuff we do at CV is like, right, who are the unreached people groups in a particular area?
Wow.
How can we reach these people? So it's about, we have a voice, but I can't necessarily speak their voice, their mother tongue, but we can find translators, we can use AI tools, and we can reach these people.
Wow.
So it gives us more opportunity than we've ever had before to really go, who is God calling me to? Or is there a group or an audience that I really want to focus on that hasn't necessarily just got to be 13 to 17-year-olds in the UK? It gives us a broader scope of people we can reach, which is exciting.
Great. Well, then asked Sat some more questions, and one of them was, could he give me some examples of people who have maybe grown their online voice from doubting that they had a voice to actually, you know what, I can do something, and he gave me this.
If you look at every big name, whether that's Stephen Bartlett or, all these big voice, Gary Vee, they all everybody started at zero. So I think the problem for us is we're always gravitating towards, even how we think about that question, like what is success? Because if success is, getting 1 million followers and whatever, then probably we're not all going to do that. But if success is, showing up, being faithful, reaching the people you're supposed to reach, then it really, really changes the game of how you think about it and what the goal is. And so I think for me, every person that, we would already know on social media, everybody, we've all got our little sort of focus, haven't we, of voices that we listen to, unless they already had a platform, which maybe they did, some of them. But for the ones who sort of made it on social media, everybody started at zero. And, I've really enjoyed following certain people who have been quite small and still are quite small. But for me, they've got like really valuable insights. And so for me, that's like, there's some very life transforming like podcasts and information and conversations even I had online that are like, whoa, that's like significantly changed the way I will do everything. That they don't have a massive following. They might have 2,000 followers or 500 followers, but these connections, I think success is a lot broader than we think it is. And so I think if we pin success just as sort of like being a big voice, I don't know, that seems pretty lame to me. I feel there's a lot more there, right?
It's really great to think of everyone just started with zero. Mr. Beast, Gary Vee, all these big people that we would say are big influencers all started with zero. So it gives us a confidence boost to say we all started from the same place. But I love how Sats keeps that really humble, that some of these people have still got small followings, but they've got a really good voice. So it's not necessarily how much of a following you've got. It's just, am I using my voice to be authentically me? In COVID, my son really got into Ryan from Ryan's World.
Right.
And he started out from literally unpacking toys, and then I think it was during COVID, he made something like 65 million from his videos. So I think when you can find that, you start in that point of zero, but then when you start to unpack who you are and you grow on that journey, it could be more successful than you ever thought. But at the same time, success isn't necessarily measured by money and followers. It's about staying small sometimes, but just impacting the one. So I think it's really knowing in yourself how success is measured, and understanding that. And I know we're going to unpack soon how we know if we've been successful. So that'll be another conversation that we're going to have soon.
Yeah, because all these hurdles that we're unpacking, they all kind of weave into each other. They're all kind of interlinked. These 10 statements, these 10 questions, these 10 hurdles that we're addressing through this podcast series is to help people overcome. And they've really come from us chatting to other people of what they should be. And one of the questions I wanted to ask Sats was, the fact that this whole space is dominated by young people primarily. There's a lot of young people on there. And I'm 41 and I feel old. And I know that there'll be people listening to this who are not 41, but are 51, 61, and they'll feel old as well. And I wanted to hear what you said about it.
One of the really interesting things is, of course, that there aren't as many older voices in the digital space. And I actually think that's one of the things it really needs, because we need like some parents to come in and bring some stuff that's a little bit more weighty, a little bit more, from like the experience of life and the pain of life. That's not just like, some 23-year-old influencer who's having a great time and has been making YouTube videos, It's like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's where I think the power of different people being in the space is really cool, because you do get this really unique perspective. And I've often felt like, I come every now and then, I'm like, why am I putting out content? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And then I just always come back to the fact that nobody else has my voice. And I feel like I'm supposed to put stuff out there. Sometimes it sort of evolves and I'm still working on what that is. But it's like nobody else can bring what I bring. And if that's just for one person, that's kind of enough, right? Like everything Jesus did was about the one, leave the 99. Obviously the 99 are cool as well. But it's really about the one. And so I think when we think about impact in those terms, like it's such a great opportunity. Like it doesn't take that much effort. It's not that hard to record a video or to write a little thing on your notes in your phone. But if that has the power to reach one person and touch one person, like that's the core of the whole thing, right?
I love the wisdom. I love the fact that we are missing those voices online. The older generation, inverted commas, they've lived it, they've experienced it, and they could bring so much knowledge to the table. And yet we seem to be missing those voices quite massively. And yet then we've also got the younger generation that are coming through as really great influencers, but that's because they've probably got the tips and the tricks and the skills. Yeah. And we almost need an amalgamation of the two, a good balance, because I know I'd personally seek out someone who's got really good wisdom, who could really help me grapple with my questions of faith. When I was trying to find the Lord and I was going on a bit of a spiritual journey after I'd been a Christian, then I'd walked away and then I was coming back because I had some big questions. And for me, the people who really brought me in were some of those older people who had lived it, could answer the questions of the reason why I'd walked away that I was struggling with. And so actually if we could hear some more of those voices that could answer some of those deep questions about suffering and pain and all those things, I think that would really help people. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember during the pandemic, which is many years ago now, but during the pandemic, there was this uplift of older people getting kind of digital savvy. I think the statistic was there was 50,000 Amazon accounts created every day during the pandemic, brand new accounts. And that was essentially older people who never thought they needed digital stuff, who were not interested, who suddenly they were isolated, they were at home, and they were finding, I need my compost and I can't get to B&Q. And so they were suddenly getting online, creating accounts. And that many years moving forward has enabled an older generation to become tech savvy. The devices are a lot easier for them to use. And so I think it's not just about older people having wisdom for the younger people. I also think there's older people, I'm talking like 40 upwards. Sorry, Charlotte. But I'm
talking everyone how old I am.
Well, no, I didn't give them the full age. But, for the many generations up for them to be able to utilize and to put the message out there are hundreds of thousands, millions of older people every day looking online to find answers, be it for how to do my garden or who is God. Yeah. And I don't know if they are going to listen to a 23-year-old walking around town with a wooden spoon like Ben, who we've interviewed before, or would they listen to Sandra, who's 70, who's going to tell her life story? And I don't know. If I was a betting man, I would put my money on Sandra, and they would go there. And so I think if we can encourage more and more people of every age group, but particularly elderly people. When I mean elderly, I'm talking our age, to be able to put their content online, that would really help a whole heap.
Yeah. I heard some stats not long ago that were around the kind of people you appeal to as well. So I think if you're like, I'm going to say 30 because I'm not going to say 40. I think if you're like 30, on average, you reach people who are 10 years older and 10 years younger.
Right. So
I think that's also why we need something, because there are people, millennials, boomers that are on TikTok and Instagram and stuff that are probably searching as well. And like you say, might not be listening to some of these younger voices as much. We still need those coming through the ranks, but they'll want to hear some of these older stories. So we need just as many people who feel called to step into this space and just reach people.
And this kind of, do people really need to hear my voice statement? I grew up with a phrase that I was taught, and it was taught from platforms, and I think many will have heard it.
Children should be seen and not heard.
That one. Definitely that one. But no, the phrase that was, it was accredited to St. Francis of Assisi. It says, preach the gospel at all times, use words if necessary. And I kind of lived with this like it was a gospel mantra, right? And people have got it written on mugs, and because it's a brilliant phrase that basically says, let your actions be loud. And it's kind of like a shun towards people just shouting, Bible verses and that kind of word. And as I've grown older, I've realized that one, that wasn't true. He didn't say that. It's just, it's one of these kind of myths that was said, but it's actually not true. It was never said. And the realization that actually the good news, the gospel, does need words. It needs people, not just to help old people across the road, or to help the poor, or to clothe the naked, feed the hungry, visit the prisoner, help the widow. It needs those actions, but it also needs words as well. And I think when you come to communicate digitally, be it through written words or be it through TikTok or Instagram or whatever else comes in our future, it requires words. And the book of Romans, Paul writes in Romans 10:14, he says, how then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And this is the bit. It says, and how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And I think this point of, do they need to hear my voice? It's already wedged into scripture, and it doesn't, my wife's never going to go online with her voice. She's not wired like that. But I think if you've got this far listening and you've kind of stumbled across these podcasts, there's something in you saying, I think I could put my stuff out online. And I suppose I want to finish by saying, how will they hear if someone doesn't preach to them? And I think carrying your voice and carrying your gift and putting it into some digital space is going to preach them. And we're not selling drugs. We're not teaching people how to rob banks. We're not telling people how to go and earn millions of pounds and line their pockets. We're pointing people towards the good news. And that is really significant and special. And so we have to get over ourselves. We have to put away our pride, and we have to put away fears and insecurities and work them through. And we have to, for those that feel like they're called to this space, which must be people listening to this, is we have to go and say, well, how are they ever going to hear? Let's go tell them the good news. And I might fumble over my words. Well, we know that Paul was a terrible preacher. I mean, someone fell out of a window and died because it was that boring, and he slept in a window and died. We know that Paul writes about himself and says, I'm not that eloquent, right? I'm not the best. Yet God took him and used his words because he was prepared to get over it. We're now surrounded by these world-class preachers. You're probably one of them as well, Charlotte.
I was just about to say, actually, I'm fumbling over my own words here, but actually I'm here, so it's something that I wouldn't naturally want to put myself forward to, but hopefully God can use it.
And he will.
So,
and that's the gift of all this, is we just bring ourselves forward, our 5 loaves, our 2 fish. We put ourselves out there and we hope that maybe it'll help them. I remember, I'll finish with this story, is I'd started putting some stuff out online. And when I first started doing it, it was the most awkward thing ever. And started with podcasts. It was specifically for church people working in church, not necessarily to go after the unbeliever who wouldn't know Jesus. And I remember at the school gate, one of the lads that I got to know, his son was in the same class as my son, said to me, do you want to, get a coffee? So we went to get a coffee, and halfway through the coffee, we hadn't really connected. He just looked at me and he went, been listening to your podcasts, and I thought, oh no, I died a million.
Good thing or bad thing,
died a million deaths because I was thinking, oh no, like I'm trying to lead up to, And he's like, it's really good,
Oh.
And then he starts to open up and unpack a little bit more of his life. Now, these podcasts, they were nothing to do with like the gospel particularly. They were just to do with church building, some of my experiences, the church post-pandemic. Yet, because it was out there, it created this conversation, and amazing, of some of those that went on. But then I realized that all the dads had like, have you seen, like, because they'd started to Google my name, right?
Okay.
It's like, hold on, my son's hanging out with his dad and going to his house. Who is this man? And they're suddenly searching like, because I've got a podcast on, they could suddenly see what's going on there. So, so my point being is the voice is out there, and it wasn't particularly in the arena I thought it would be, but it created a conversation, and that I'm really grateful for.
That's great. And I think just one little side bit is that if someone doesn't want to use their physical voice, there's, these faceless accounts that you can set up where you can have this stock footage, you can put text over it, you can use AI voices. Obviously we want to show up and be authentic, but at the same time there's still options. So
and written content.
Written blogs, all those kind of things are other ways of putting your message out there for people. So it's just being creative with what you've got. So we've got 10 of these obstacles, questions, statements that we're going to try help people overcome. And so this one is,
do people really need to hear my voice? Hopefully we've helped to dig some people out and show that actually your voice is really valuable in this space. So be encouraged, take a step and go on that journey.